All right, so now let's talk about box and whisker plots. As you've seen a little bit with some of the other readings, a box and whisker plot is kind of what we come up with. And in terms of showing a distribution or graphing a distribution, again, if we're interested in using the 5-number summary to summarize our data, right? And again, we do that when the distribution is a bit skewed. We have some outliers. There are some things that will really mess with our mean. And so the median tends to make more sense in terms of what we want to talk about to describe our data, right? So it all starts with the 5-number summary, our box and whisker plot does. So again, we're going to want to order our data. So 7, 14, 15, 17, 17, 18, and 19, right? So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Our median is 17, or Q2. Obviously, our minimum is 7. Our maximum is 19. And then we want to find the median of our medians, right? So in other words, the bottom half, find the median of that, which is 14 for our Q1 and 18 for our Q3. Right? And so we use those numbers and then a single axis to kind of draw our box and whisker plot. And so it should look like a box with some whiskers on it. Right? So again, we bring over our 5-number summary of 7, 14, 17, 18, 19. So 7, 14, 17, 18, 19. Right? And so this is free throws made. Okay, maybe in some basketball games. And so here's what we do. So we create a box for our middle 50%, right? And again, this is going to be a graphical display. So we're going to lose a bit of detail in our data, right? We're not going to see the individual data pieces anymore. We're just going to see where the middle 50% sit, right? So the middle half of our data sit between 14 and 18. So we create a box between 14 and 18. That's the box part. Okay. Within that box, we'll show the median, or Q2. Q2 is at 17, so it's right here. And then we'll show whiskers out to show that there are some data outside of our middle 50%. So all the way out to here is one whisker that goes out to 7. And then another whisker on top goes out to 19, which would be about right there. Okay? It doesn't have to be exact. As a matter of fact, sometimes you have to scale your axis by so much that it becomes very, very difficult to be really accurate. So what we do is when we create the box plot is we go ahead and we write in our 7-number summary so that we can we don't have to make everybody just sort of figure out where all of these quartiles are. So we can write them here right above all of our different quartiles. Okay. Now, with the whiskers. Now, it certainly looks like 7 is very, very far away from the rest of our data. Could be an outlier, right? And we'll talk about how to get outliers maybe a little bit later. Okay. And so with a box and whisker plot, if 7 were an outlier, sometimes your whiskers come all the way out to your minimum value. Or if 7 were an outlier, what could happen is that sometimes 7 is out here as an X or a dot. And then our sort of whisker will extend down to the next smallest value, just to show that 7 is an outlier. Okay. Now here we're not 100% sure, right? As a matter of fact, Matter of fact, actually 7 would be an outlier when you use the 1.5 times IQR rule, but we'll get into that a little bit later, okay? You know what? Actually, let's talk about it now. So, is 7 an outlier? Well, to determine your outlier, there's what's called a 1.5 times IQR rule, right? And so what you want to know is your minimum and maximum values. Are they farther away from your middle 50% than 1.5 times the IQR, the interquartile range, right? Remember, the interquartile range tells you how spread out your middle 50% is. So here our interquartile range is going to be Q3 minus Q1. So we get 18 minus 14, which is 4, right? So we got to find out what 1.5 times 4 is, right? Which is going to be 6. And if I want to know minimum or maximum, either one, right? So our minimum value, is it an outlier? Well, we would take our Q1 and subtract our 1.5 times IQR from it. So our Q1 is 14, subtract 6, you get 8, right? So if our minimum is outside of that number, then it is considered an outlier. So as a matter of fact, 7 would be considered an outlier. So the whisker doesn't have to extend out to 7. It could. Many of them do, but sometimes not. Your graphing calculator will not show the outliers. It'll extend the whiskers all the way out to the minimum and the maximum, okay? Now, same thing for the maximum value. The maximum is 19, but is 19 farther away than from Q3 than 1.5 times the IQR? So we add Q3 plus 6, so we go 18 plus 6, which is 24. And 19 is not outside of 24, right? 19 is less than 24, so 19 is not an outlier. And therefore, we go ahead and extend the whisker out to 19, whether we want to show outliers or not. Okay, so just a quick side note on how to come up with outliers using the 5-number summary. Okay, and that's it about our box plots.